Yeah, yeah.
We are the epitome of Black female love.
It's easy for us as Black women to hold up the banner and the calls for everyone else. But again, who holds up the banner and the calls for us? What role does the church play in all of this stuff?
Is that we as a Black church are perpetuating the same behavior as a patriarchal evangelicals have been doing.
Right. And guess
church, but it's the sisters in the congregation.
But it's a lot of times it is the Black women who bring us down more, or push or try to silence our voices more in the Black church.
Hold on.
Hey, my sisters, how are you all today? Oh,
hello. How are you?
Oh, how are you?
Doing absolutely wonderful.
The sun is shining. It's so beautiful.
Is it really? It's cold here.
Our viewing audience, thank you all for joining us. Please, let us see your names in the chat. Let us know where it is you are listening to us from. I see you, Sharon Mitchell from Michigan, Renee Thompson-Jones from Dallas, Texas. Now, I got two things. I think, Wallace, you said it was cold, and right, okay, I see your new hair. I'm not certain if the glasses are the same.
Girl gotta do it then. It's a little change.
So, Wallace, you said it is cold are you in Atlanta? Is that where?
Yes,
you're
I am in
Atlanta.
I'm in Hot Atlanta. Be in Oklahoma City next week. So hopefully I can get on time next week.
OKC.
Yep, in OKC, your stomping grounds.
That's all right. Well, the weather here it was 46 earlier when I was out. Must still be pretty nice because I heard my neighbors out and I went and looked out the front door with my puppy. And she was watching the neighbors' kids play across the way. So it must still be pretty nice because they were out there.
So you have a nice day. Wow. Yeah, we haven't warmed up yet in DC. But it's not cold, but we're hoping the cherry blossoms have started. Say it again.
It was 32 degrees here this morning.
Oh wow.
Nice.
You all are a little bit colder than we are.
And we're south of you. What's that about?
Yeah.
Wow. So before we bring our guest up, ladies, just what's been going on outside of the weather? I have been oblivious to the news. I have been in retreat for about 4 days or so, and just getting back acclimated to things here. So, but what's going on with you all?
Oh my! I tell you, I have watched. I watched The Woman King again today. You know, I'm still on this little sabbatical with me, which I plan on coming off of that hopefully by next week or so I can go back into the workplace. But so I've watched The Woman King and I saw highlights of things. You know, I heard so many people make comments saying, you know, they don't tell you that they sold people and so forth and so on. And, you know, and I was listening to it today and I heard, you know, as you listen to it over and over, you hear different bits and pieces. You hear more, a little bit, you know, clearly. And so there was one comment where he said, we're going to be an empire. And her response was, I want to be an empire, but we don't want to be an empire that sells our people.
Yep.
That was a powerful line.
That's what she said. It was very powerful.
Yes. And so, I really enjoyed being able to get that little nugget from it and find out that, hey, they weren't just heathens, as some people tried to portray. And I don't know why it is that people go above and beyond to try to discredit and so forth, but I think it was very, very nicely done. And then the other piece to that was, and you hear a statement that just kind of stands out for you, and the one that stood out to me was when the king made the statement and said, the only way that you can hold the people in chains is if you convince them that they are bound. I said, okay. That head thing, that's something. That's something.
Yep.
That's something.
I agree with that.
Yes. But other than that, we are blessed, and we're getting ready for the NFL draft. And
we don't want to hear about Kansas City and NFL draft. Okay. All right. So Wallace, how you doing?
The city looks so pretty, and all the red.
So how you doing, Wallace? Okay.
Okay. Chiefs that won the Super Bowl. Those.
Okay. Let me see. Okay. I'm sorry, her mic just went mute.
I'm so glad I don't have to fight between Dallas and Kansas City because I don't care nothing about no football, and I can't care too much about it being in Atlanta, right?
Oh,
I'm not gonna match my home state.
Other than it's been cold, I'm on the international stage. I guess they're gonna file charges against Putin for war crimes. That'll be good. And terrorist acts. That's about all the news I've seen all week. So I don't know what else is going on in the world.
And I hear you say that, but what's gonna come out of it? Because honestly, I'm disappointed in seeing these things come up, which are absolutely valid. It should be addressed, and it should be addressed properly. And then it kind of goes by the wayside. We let too much drift away.
I agree with you. The commentator this morning was saying if Cuba is on the list for terrorist acts and
not Cuba
and crimes against humanity, most definitely Russia needs to be there. But who knows? They get by with a whole lot. There's still the fight between two Republicans running for president. But I ain't gonna call no names. I'm gonna let you guess. And that's about all I know. Venicia, I kind of been out of it myself this week.
Well, I tell you what, one of them's the Italian stallion down there in Florida, and then the other.
Oh Lord, I'm praying that neither one of them have a chance, Lord God. Neither one of those.
I don't know the nature of this country. You good Christian folk, evangelicals,
that don't want to go
and
vote.
all of you persons of color who just think that this group has your best interest at heart. I'm not so convinced. I find it quite intriguing that the governor of Florida, as we talked about for the last couple of weeks, has made an intentional attack on education,
and
has made an intentional attack on gender and its diversity among certain groups. Has made intentional attacks on quote woke, right? All of those are dog whistle things to me. And so there is some base that he's seen. Obviously 45 was able to attract large portions of that group, but I'm not convinced that you have to remember in the last election, there were still over how many millions of people? 30, was it 30 or 60 million people that voted for? What was it? And we have to be aware that a large segment of this country supported the previous president
Yep.
in 2020. Right. And so I'm not convinced.
Split down the middle, it can be anybody's game. We are definitely split down the middle.
And one thing that is disturbing is this group of people that's saying, "I'm just not going to vote." You know what? Get your rusty dusty up and go vote,
please.
We need you to vote. And the very ones that don't vote are the ones that want to complain and talk about everything that's going on. If you're not going to vote, don't complain.
Absolutely.
Don't complain.
Absolutely.
Because there's some stuff.
Well, not only voting, but our people really need to fill out the census. Well, you think about it in an area, just use these numbers, these little small numbers. If in an area there are 500 Black folk and only 100 of them fill out the census, they only gonna go by the 100. They're not gonna look at the people who did not fill out the census. So you can't get no Walmart in your area. You can't get no Publix in your area.
But Wallace, and in some places that is true. But remember last week in our discussion of talking about Jackson, Mississippi, that you have a place that is 80% African American. That they did vote. They did when they voted. They did vote their representatives. But the state comes in and then just overrides that.
And nullifies it. You're exactly right.
But much of that foolishness, knowing where this is going and what's taking place, a lot of that foolishness got to be nipped in the bud. I mean, call a spade a spade.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Some stuff can only be nipped in the bud if more persons of color utilize their Second Amendment right. Wallace, will you introduce our guest for us, please? Because some nipping can only come.
I shall. We are so happy to have our guest today. She has 15 years experience in branding, coaching, and strategy, plus near a decade of experience as a New York faith leader and a trusted leader that influences teams. Her strategic living involves 3 S's: scars, stories, and strengths. That is her quote. In 2020, while composing a series of devotionals, she and her husband came up with Double Love Experience, and they came out with a devotion on the Psalms. She's appeared on BET. She's appeared on Knowles Music World Entertainment, RCA Inspiration, New York City-based boutique PR firm, and she's worked with Yale, her alma mater, as a senior brand strategist. She looks at what's going on in public, what's going on in our world. Please welcome to our broadcast none other than the pastor of the Greater Allen Cathedral of New York, Dr. Gabby Cudjoe Wilkes. We're so happy.
Now, the pastor of Greater Allen Cathedral is Reverend Dr. Elaine McCollins Flake. We got to get that correct. Thank you.
I'm so sorry. You are so right. Under the leadership of the Reverends, Doctors Floyd and Elaine Flake, you are so right. I missed that. I'm so sorry.
No, that's all right, ladies. Thank you for having me. Yes, I am the pastor of the Double Love Experience Church, which I founded in 2018 by God's grace. And I am formally the young adult pastor of the Greater Allen Cathedral of New York, where the Flakes have served for almost 45 years. To God be the glory. As one of the largest churches in New York City, they are my mentors. They are my parents in the ministry, and I thank God for them. And I cut my my teeth in ministry, serving under them in my 20s and my early 30s as the young adult pastor. But now I serve as senior pastor of my church, the Double Up Experience. Hey, y'all. What's up?
Hey. We're so glad to have you. So glad to have you.
I'm happy to be here.
What's the weather like in New York? Please tell us.
Oh, you know, it was snowing this morning. It's not now. I can't even call it. I cannot even call it. You know, I got this little vest on because I believe in dressing in layers. And last night it was raining. You know, we just rock with it. We just rock with it however we can.
Whatever comes your way. I get it. I get it. Well, thank you for being with us today. And Psalms for Black Lives, your devotional. Talk to us about that. Yay. And hold it up again. Audience, our viewing audience, please, please, please go and on Amazon and get your copy. Psalms for Black Lives. Sounds
absolutely, like absolutely. Yeah, listen, I am thrilled to be here. Okay, I see you, Dr. Burns. I see you. I love it. I love it.
Let me get my Kindle out.
I know that's right. Pull it out. Everything matters. And we came on audiobook in February. So every version counts. Every version counts. But no, it has been a blessing. First of all, I got to shout out one of my members who I see in the chat. No stranger to you all, Reverend Dr. Kelly Farrell. So good to see you, Rev. She serves with me at Double Love. Love her dearly. And I also need to shout out Chalice because I love me some Dr. Chalice. And she and I have been trying to get me on Timely Wisdom for I think it's been a year now. I mean, we have been trying hard, and so I know she is away and doing the things that she needs to do, but I can't begin without showing love to her. Salt for Black Lives.
Yes. Talk to me about your favorite psalm. Which one was it?
Yeah, absolutely. So my favorite psalm, it really varies based on what I'm going through. That's what I love about the Psalms, is that I like to say there's a psalm for that. There is literally a psalm for every emotion that we can experience, for every experience that we might endeavor, any emotions that we're afraid to say out loud. The psalmist has already complained for us. The psalmist has already praised for us. The psalmist has already turned the prayer wheel for us.
Lord have mercy. You better say that, girl.
I'm just trying to let you know.
Dr. Wilkes.
There's a psalm for that. So the psalm I'm feeling right now is Psalm 27. Which is actually the first psalm that we do in our book. We call it Defiant Confidence. And the reason why I love that psalm is because it has that yet factor. Now, y'all know, y'all are all preachers. Y'all understand when we have a yet in a scripture, it means regardless of what has happened, yet I will. Come on. Yet and but are powerful words when we deal with the text. Amen. And so what I love about Psalms 27 is that it allows us to be confident. Yet I will be confident repeats itself time and time again. And what it means for me is that regardless of what life is throwing our way, we don't have to ignore the realities of what's happening. Amen. We can confront them head on, and yet I will be confident. And so that's my favorite song, one of my favorites, certainly my favorite in this time where I'm really trying to encourage Black men and Black women to reclaim our confidence. We keep our heads down too much, and we apologize too much, and we too worried about what people. No, we're called to be confident even in spite of any hardship that might come our way. So that's what I'm working with right now. So
do you see Dr. right over there just rocking when you
I like you listed the Psalm 27, and one of the questions you have there, I found it most compelling for continued reflection. It says what does it look like to lament the moments when we could have exercised defiant confidence, but ultimately did not? Yeah. And, just as you said with the yet or not apologizing, right? Because, usually, we talked about this a lot with some of our other guests and among ourselves on the show, that as Black women, to go into certain spaces, especially, that it is almost apologetic. Well, I'm not trying to take somebody's role. Well, I don't want to speak too loud. I don't want to look too boisterous, too confident, right? And in that, but that's just one aspect of it. But what does to reflect on when could I shown divine confidence, right? And didn't.
Yeah, I mean, my husband and I co-wrote this book together, and we really have a heart for helping people with this kind of idea that God will redeem the time, right? We talk about it a lot in church, that God will redeem the time. And I really believe it to be true. But what we don't often talk about is the lament that we hold that God has to redeem the time in the first place. And if we are honest, we're grateful that God can redeem the time, but sometimes we're frustrated where we're just like, man, but if I had just made a different decision, God wouldn't have to step in, right? And so I want people to release the guilt of making decisions. You had the information you had before you made a decision that felt right to you, and it might not have been the one that gave you the best return on your investment, but release the guilt, release the shame of whatever decision you made when your back was against the wall, because we serve a God who redeems our time. And so that prompt, again, it's a devotional. We want to go deep with people and encourage people to have some talks with Jesus, right? And tell them about our troubles, right? So bring that lament, bring that thing that you're embarrassed that God had to redeem, that you felt.
We did it, but the note was, excuse me, Doc, when you made the decision, when your back is against the wall, you did the best you know to do.
Yeah.
You did the best you knew to do. So we can rejoice in knowing that, hey, confidently, well, I made a mistake. How can I now right the path? So I agree with you. We need to talk about it in confidence. We don't need to hold our heads down in shame. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Help our audience though, and tell us, what is a brand strategist? We don't know anything about that. At least I don't. I got a business and I need a brand strategist about now.
So before I was in full-time ministry, I spent 10 years as a publicist, doing brand strategy, doing placement for my clients in media and TV, in news, on radio, and the like. A brand strategist is someone that helps you get clear about what your work is and how you want to be known. This is very important, especially for Black women. It's Women's History Month, Women's Her Story Month. A lot of Black women wear a lot of hats. We do a lot of things. And what I tell my clients when I put on my brand strategist hat is that you have to be careful about allowing other people to brand you based on the things you do well. Because just because you do it well doesn't mean you want to do it. I'm a preacher, so I'm going to repeat that. Just because you do it well does not mean you want to do it. And so we have to be careful about allowing other people to brand us as the go-to person for stuff we do well that we hate, right? And so brand strategy takes back control and says, no, this is how I want to move through the world. This is the work that I'm passionate about. This is the way in which I desire to be engaged. And I am going to build my work. I am going to build my reputation. I'm going to build my networking around the area that God has called me to, that I want to build, and not what society thinks I need to build. And I'll give you a very quick example. I'm a mentor for Rise Together in Ministry, an organization. It's been about 4 years now. Dr. Lisa Rose is at the helm. And I did a workshop for them. And I did a poll in Zoom. It was all women, intergenerational group. I did a poll in Zoom, asked them to select which ministry they felt most called to. I had Christian education. I had women's ministry. I had youth ministry. I had ministry outside of the four walls of the church. Can I tell you, in a women's mentoring network where I was giving a workshop full of women, intergenerational, the least selected button was women's ministry. But what's the first thing people ask women to do when they realize we're clergy? Women ministry, right?
And children.
And so there is such a disconnect, which I believe leads to burnout, between what we are actually doing and what we're actually called to do, because nobody stops to ask us, and we don't take the time to tell people where our call is. And so I'm passionate about it. It's another area of my work. I've worked with pastors, leaders, churches, ministers, entrepreneurs. I believe it's critical for us to take. I believe it's good stewardship. I'll say this and I'll let you turn it back to you all. But I believe brand strategy is actually good stewardship. To be a good steward over your gift is to be clear about your gift and to make space to be able to operate in your gift, in what God has called you to, and not just what people put on you.
Well, Doc, do you see that if we're able to claim what it is that we're supposed to do, is that social justice? Is that a way in which we can offer to the world what we do best instead of what other folks?
I wouldn't name that as social justice. Now, I'm passionate about social justice, but I wouldn't name that as social justice. I would name that as advocacy, agency, empowerment, purpose-driven living. I wouldn't name it as social justice.
Okay, so then talk to us about Gabby, Wilkes, and social justice. Where are you there?
Can you give me a more specific question?
Okay. Is it breadbasket? Is your voting rights? Is it paying off these student loans? What is your heart for when it comes to social justice? Where's your heart?
Can I be frank?
Please.
Okay.
Please.
I really feel like white supremacy has caused the Black church to feel like we have to pick an area. And so I respect your question, but I can't answer your question within the framework, because I don't believe that social justice is picking one area and focusing on that. I believe that social justice is getting us back to a just world, getting us back to a place where we serve a God of sufficiency. All we have needed, God's hand hath provided. Great is God's faithfulness. And the greed of people has caused us to live in a climate of lack when God created enough for us all. So social justice is a way of life, right? The mantra for social justice comes from Luke 4:18, Jesus's mission statement, where Jesus says, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon
me. Yes.
The poor, to release the captives, bring sight to the blind, let the oppressed go free." But if that is Jesus's mission statement, then every miracle, every sermon, everything Jesus does technically is social justice, but we don't put it in a category, right? We don't put a lid on it, because Jesus is about restoration and restoring the world back to what it was before humans came in and messed it up because of our own greed, because of our own lack of trust and our lack of ability to rely on the Lord. So I think that we should all walk in just living, just imagination. In my book, I talk about this concept called justice imagination, being able to free ourselves back into actually dreaming into a world of justice. But I want us to resist the urge to categorize justice, because that's not comprehensive enough. And I think that because there's so much lack, we sometimes feel like we have to compartmentalize, because then we won't get anything done. But I actually believe that social justice work is embedded in just being a Christian, and that work is what we're always looking at. So justice looks like bringing a womanist hermeneutic to the Bible, making sure we're preaching sermons fully, making sure we are taking women off the witness stand and putting our male heroes on the witness stand who we never interrogate, because there's injustice there between how we deal with different genders in our church. Justice looks like making, so I think that justice is embedded in ministry that follows the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Awesome.
I don't believe it's compartmentalized, and I believe we've been socialized to compartmentalize, because then we don't get to everything, and there's some things that get left undone. And so justice is a part of the fabric of what I do, but I believe it's a part of the fabric of what Jesus did.
So in all that we do, get understanding about what social justice is for us. I like that. I'd never thought about it that way, because so many people are hungry. So many people are in prison, incarcerated. So many, and we kind of spread ourselves thin. If we're, I like what you say, but I don't know how we can, like you say, get anything done if we spread ourselves over everything, and so that we live in this just world. But in my little corner of the world, I want to be just. I want to live that just life. So I think that's where you're coming from, not necessarily about a program, but that my life is a just life. I think that, am I right there?
I think that's fair. I think that's fair. I mean, I think I articulated, where I am. Where I am is that this entire project is restoring us back to what was broken, right? When sin enters the world, and when we take our eyes off of what God created, where there is enough for all, right? So at the heart of justice, it's that whatever we need to have to live this abundant life that we're called to, in whatever area, right? So for instance, if you want to talk about justice a little bit longer, I'll say it like this. Many of our churches have prison ministries, right? Which is critical. We need to do ministry to those who are incarcerated. But do we also have ministries that are interrogating why we're incarcerated in the first place? Many of our churches have food pantries, clothing shelters. Critical, necessary work. We cannot talk about policy and not meet the immediate needs of what people are going through. But are we also interrogating the greed that gets us there? And so my bottom line is, I believe that every Christian, if we are Luke 4:18 centered, then we will always find ways to do justice in the world.
Awesome. Thank you. That's beautiful. That right there. How or what tips could you provide to our audience about not just justice, but about their brand? And you started out talking about Rise, and how the women of intergenerations did not want to see our select women's ministry as a place to be. How do we create this? What are the tips that we can use to organize our brand?
I want to be fair to the example I gave. There were many options for people to select what ministry they felt called to. And the least selected option was women's ministry. So these weren't women saying, I don't want to serve women. These were women saying, I am called to X, Y, and Z. And because I asked them, they had the opportunity to name what they were called to.
Gotcha.
That's all it is. You need to be able to be. There are so many women in ministry who have never been asked, what are you called to?
Ooh.
There are assumptions based on who we are about what we are called to. But the same doesn't happen for men. Every man who enters ministry is not acquiesced over to the men's ministry. Men's ministry are normally run by lay people because the ordained clergy brethren don't want to touch it. If we could keep it
real.
I mean, y'all, that's what I heard y'all do at Timely Wisdom.
That's right. Keep it real. That's
y'all
right.
leave me out there, but so why is it that we assume we know the call and understand the call of women leaders, but we give men the space to articulate what they're called to?
That's good.
That's what I'm pushing back against.
Yeah, that's wonderful. This viewer asked Reverend Casey, how do you define justice? Is it fairness? I know that you spent time on it, and I guess she's asking specifically, would fairness be one of its definitions?
Yeah, I think fairness is included. Yeah.
I appreciate in the last example that you gave about the choices that men are given that are in ministry. When you were saying it earlier about the survey and then the others, I was just kind of playing back in my own mind, right, of what it was or the things I had constantly been asked to do in those years before I retired. I can't say that enough. It's just so good to be retired.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Retirement is a blessing. A blessing.
But to think about that, okay, and to hear that, or to consistently in the Methodist Church, I mean, to be consistently told or assigned to this is what you're doing. It's kind of like I remember first one of the times I said it to one of my leaders, I really just don't want to do that, and the look of surprise, on his face. I mean, if you need me to help get it started or so, I can do that. But my focus, my interest is really over here, right? And that conversation became tense because of pushing back against it.
Yeah.
I think that happens a lot, Dr. Burns, in connectional churches. Not that it doesn't happen in non-connectional churches, because it happens in the Baptist church as well. The Baptist church and the non-denominational church as well, because they think they have pigeonholed us into what they want us to do and be. And when you do speak up for yourself and know what it is that God has called you to do, you often get pushed back. So I think we ought to look for that pushback, because it's always going to come in my mind. Would you agree, Dr. Wilkes?
I think that's right. And I think we often also need to remember that all of our ministry does not have to happen in the four walls of whatever church we serve.
Say
so
that.
Being clear.
Wait, that preacher, do that one more time.
Yeah, I mean, everything that God has called you to do may not be able to be housed in the church that you serve. I mean, we say the same thing to married couples. Your spouse is not going to be able to meet every single need that you better get you some friends, some family, some hobbies, right? It's the same thing with the church. And so I think that we need to be clear so that we can figure out what lanes do we need to go in to actually carry out the purpose that God has placed on us. But what happens is so often we're not clear. We're only saying yes to whatever invitation is given to us by people that we respect and admire. And we're not listening to the voice of God. I think it's possible to do what is asked of you out of respect for whoever is in leadership, but to also save some opportunity, some energy, some capacity within you to carry out your additional ministry goals. Of course, if you're under a pastor, get their buy-in, get their permission. But not everything is going to be able to be housed in the local church that you serve. But that doesn't mean that you should abandon what God has called you to do, because there's still people attached to your yes.
Whoa, that right there.
Every time you give God a yes, there's somebody attached to that yes who can now walk in purpose because you said yes. Because your yes was connected to their ability to get plugged into what God wants them to do. So when we stand before, God, when we get to heaven, we're not just giving an account for whether we're saved or not. We're giving an account for whether we were true and good stewards to everything God called us to, because there are people attached to the yes that we give God. This ain't no ego thing. This is, I got to get this work done because there are people who need this, and I am the conduit that God has chosen to use.
Awesome.
Souls attached to your anointing.
Yes.
Definitely that.
Well, what did you're doing some research around social entrepreneurship, social innovation, and the Black church. So can you help us what has your research shown you so far around that area?
Yeah, one of it is just the disparity between the funding that Black congregations have versus other congregations when we're doing the same work. And so when it comes to social entrepreneurship, when it comes to social innovation, oftentimes we in the Black church do this work, but don't call it that. And so we don't know to apply for certain grants. We don't know to make sure that we are reporting this work to a broader audience beyond who is in our psyche, and so who is in our congregations. And so as a result, we're trying to make $1 out of 15 cents at the local church level. And what my research has shown me, I did my doctorate at Duke and I studied under Gregory Jones, who has done a lot of work around Christian social innovation. And I did a lot of work with many Lilly funded congregations. And Lilly was giving out money just to have people have conversations about what innovation might be. Right. And we're sitting here innovating at the Black church, day after day after day with no help. Right. No external help. And there are other congregations that were not ashamed to say, hey, we don't know. We don't have a clue what we're doing. Can you give us some money to help us think about what to do? Right. And so the disparity between us really connecting to resources, which allows us to have longevity. I am a local church pastor, and my church is struggling with keeping finances in because we have not found enough external help. Right. Our churches can't just live off of tithes and offering forever, especially whenever you go through a recession, whenever you have people leaving your church in this time period where folks are attending a lot of churches on YouTube. They're giving to zero. I'm going to say it again. Folks are getting the word from 10 different pastors. They're giving to zero churches. And so we are in a climate where people are not necessarily really having good stewardship over their resources for Black congregations. And so Black congregations are dying even faster than we were when people were at least like, my tithe is going to go to my local church. Y'all remember the days where it was like, I'm going to sell this fish dinner for my local church. I'm going to give to this building fund from my local church. I'm going to tithe. If I make $50, 5 of it is going to my local church. But we're losing that because of the connectivity of people being able to just listen to whatever pastor they love. And I'm not knocking that, but usually people don't give after they've watched virtual church. And so if we're losing that, and we're also not connected to external funding opportunities, then we're really always playing catch up. And that is a part of my research that I want us to get out of. I'm tired of us having to always play catch up when we are innovative to our core. And so I want to see more consistent funding for us. And I want to see us be able to tell our story better. We need to write more. We need to chronicle what we're doing more. We need to connect the dots of what we're doing locally to how it's impacting nationally.
It's interesting that you made that statement about the how people are not reconnecting with the local churches. However, so many comments are made about COVID and the guidelines being lifted and being able to get back out into various spaces. They get back into every space they want to get back into, but the church.
Right.
You are so very right.
Right.
And that accountability, because at the end of the day, you still need God. And need him even more so than what you probably needed him before.
Right. And you have a duty to keep the places that are doing the work open.
Absolutely.
Like I'm just gonna be blunt. I mean, this is timely wisdom, right? Let's be wise, saints. If you care about the church that allows you to stream virtually, even if you never walk back into that place because you've adjusted to virtual church, you have a duty to make sure that they can keep doing ministry. That's something that has always been in the DNA of our ancestors, and we've lost that along the way. We've lost the communal responsibility of if everybody's doing their part, I won't need a grant. Most churches survive off of 30% of their congregation tithing.
Or 30%. The pastor working.
Pastor working and 30% of the congregation tithing, because that happens too. My point is, if there's always been 70% of folks who just don't give, right? And if that's now decreasing even more, where is the communal responsibility that even if I never walk into this church, I want this church to keep going so that people can keep receiving what God has for them. So I need to do my part.
Right. Yeah. It's a work of the enemy for this individualism. And you called it white supremacy earlier, but it's that white supremacist individualism that we have bought into in some spaces and forgotten about, if I got 2 pennies, I need to share one of them with the rest of the world.
Amen.
So I really am fond of your talking about innovation and how we can look outside the 4 walls of the church to find funding, in addition to the church being that communal space to help the community. I really think that we need both of them.
Right.
And if I can add to what Dr. Wallace has said, I think not only I think there's also an addition to binding to the individualism, white supremacy. I also think that we have run into a time of mass time of hopelessness among people, and that that what it is shown, because of scandals that have happened, because of social media and everything else now, and television, it seems as though the good of churches is not being told, but all the scandals will be told. Mm-hmm. That when we talked earlier about politics, that that there are good things that have happened, but because when you have someone now who is set in the highest chair of the land that said, "Oh, it's stolen, it's all corrupt," and so if you already are scraping by or barely getting by, already dealing with all of the pressures that life is offering you, and then you get to church, what are they saying that's giving you hope, right? What is occurred to that you see that they're fighting for your community, that they're fighting for you, that helping you with just basic things, and I just think a spirit of hopelessness has seeped into the midst of us, along with that individualism. I just want to, yeah.
But God is our hope in ages past and today. So,
true.
That's
but true.
That just went all over me. So,
right, but true. But when we have individualism, when you know, now you all know that the setting that I'm in now, and talking with these graduate students, right? It's hopelessness, that the future looks dim for them. And yes, God is our present hope. Yes, that is great, because we have gotten to a place to understand it. But when we are not articulating it or exemplifying it, then we're faced with, then how can we better say what what it is that we believe, and which is what I think is tremendous about the Psalms for Black Lives, right? Of being able to take that and put it in everyday kind of language to kind of go against the spirit of what I consistently see of hopelessness and despair.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting, because when I was in my hopeless state, I could not see. But you lament long enough and stay with the Lord long enough, the darkness becomes light. And that is the story we got to tell. That it doesn't happen overnight. And I think we are in a age, and Dr. Gabby, you can talk to this even more, where our children have been in this instantaneous microwave world, and they expect everything to come to them easy, or they expect it to come fast.
As you respond, Dr. Wilkes, yes, we're able to fall back on it, but starting with my generation who stopped bringing their children to church, we have generations of folk who have no idea of who God is. None. So they don't have that to fall back on. And the tidbits that they hear about church, I again go back to the beginning of what I was saying, not simply adding on to what you were saying, Dr. Wallace, and individualism, that along with that individualism, that this spirit of despair and hopelessness begins to pervade. And I think individualism opens the door for it. But also, I mean, every Pew Research, there's an entire generation that just they don't even know what the church is. And yeah, to add.
You're right. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I see I teach pastors all day long, and you're right. There is this sense of how do I bring in the lost generation? What do I do to bring the lost generation? And I have to turn the question back on them. What do you think you need to do? But it's Dr. Gabby, help us out here. How do we bring that generation that we've lost? How do we bring them back to the church?
I think we have to be careful about our framework. I don't know that we have lost a generation. Language matters. Young people are very aware of who God is.
They're spiritual, not church. Yeah.
They're very aware of what it means to have faith in God. They're very aware of what it means to pray, what it means to even have meditative practices. They're very aware of God, right? And so, number one, I challenge us not to say lost generations, because they're not lost. They're not lost. They may have made a decision, a choice, not to come into our churches, but that doesn't mean they're lost. And a lot of times there's a kind of infantilizing of folks who choose not to come to church. And so we never actually hear them out about why. And you will be very surprised about the reasons why a lot of people are not walking into our churches. Typically has very little to do with what they believe about God. It often has a lot to do with how fed up they are with Christians. Right? And so here we are as Christians talking about a lost generation. What if they're more found than the Christians in the church? What if these folks have stripped themselves down to the basics of the faith and have said, I don't have to deal with church politics. I don't have to be frowned upon because of how I walk in here, because I don't have on pantyhose and my skirt ain't down to my ankles. I don't have to deal with Black men who can't call me a preacher. I gotta be a first lady or a woman of God. I don't have to deal with finance ministries who, even though I'm the VP of banking, I got to sit in the back row like I don't understand finances because I'm not 60 years old, because they don't respect me, even though I'm a VP at 35. We really have to be careful about our framework.
That's good, Doc.
Lost? What if the Christians in the church are lost and the Christians outside of the church have actually found God? What if they're the ones who have gotten back to the purity of what it means to follow the carpenter, as my colleague Mike Walren would say? What if they're the ones who have actually gotten hold of the ability to have God's kingdom on earth as it is in heaven, and to try to do communal living, like taken up cash apps when folks are in need and making sure they can eat, and, you know, praying to God and having Bible study in their homes? I worry about us because we look down on folks who don't walk into the mess that we have decided we have to deal with because we're Christian. Who said we have to?
Yes, you don't.
Who said we have to deal with the stuff?
We don't.
That comes with being in the church. And so I believe that community is necessary. I don't believe that any Christian should walk alone. But I also believe that there are many Christians who are Gen Z, who are Generation Alpha, who are the younger spectrum of millennials who have decided, I don't need your institution to make God proud, to have a community of believers, to pray, to receive the word. And so what I think the real question is not to call them a lost generation. It's not to say to them, how do we get them back? It's really to say to the church, what have we done that has gotten so far away from what God intended that people don't want to deal with us? See, we want to make the conversation about the folks that won't walk inside. We're not willing to have a conversation about what are the barriers to people walking inside that we have grown accustomed to because we're just used to being here. That other folks, I don't have to live like this. Every generation comes into a new, let me put it like this. Every Black person, every generation walks into a new awareness of, I don't have to live like this. Children of enslaved folks realize, I don't have to live like this. Children of Jim Crow realize, I don't have to live like this. Children of the pandemic realize, I don't have to live like this. What is happening in our churches that when somebody decides, I'm going to live an elevated life closer to what God has called me to, when they walk into our church, it brings them down and they say, I don't have to live like this. And they walk into what I believe is a more found way of living. And I'm a pastor who planted a church in Brooklyn, New York. So I love the church, but I think the church needs to look like a place that people who are clear about God and clear about their call can find God in our churches and not only in the streets.
Wow, what a powerful way to close us out on today.
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am.
It sounds like we've been getting back, Dr. Burns, to the church that we heard about last week, that the church houses, that were run by women.
Yes, sir.
Getting back to that. Thank you so much, Dr. Gabby. You have blessed our souls and made us think today.
Amen.
And rethink today. So I'm grateful. So hold on backstage. Do not leave us. We want to talk to you afterwards if you got time.
All right. I gotta jump to my Bible study for my church, but I have a little time.
Okay. All right.
God bless you all. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Dear audience, please put it in the comments. You can read the comments about how your soul has been blessed on today with our guest. And so, Dr. Wallace, on next week, we have the illustrious now TV attorney, Natasha Robinson will be with us on next week to discuss a legal matter. And so I know this is going to be, next week is going to be fire for us as well.
Again. That's 3 or 4 weeks in a row. That's good. That's good.
Yes. So we say to all of you all who've joined us on today, those of you who will watch us later, thank you for stopping by Timely Wisdom. And the Lord says the same. We will see you next week at the same time. God bless.
God bless.